Let's go live to Tel Aviv now. Joining me is Israel's Defence Force spokesperson, Lieutenant Colonel Jonathan Conricus. Thanks so much for your time once again. Can you tell me a bit more about these humanitarian pauses? Earlier this week, you said there was a 4-hour window on a daily basis. Has that changed?
Good morning. Thank you for having me, Laura. No, it has not. We continue with that practice. This is the 5th straight day where we have humanitarian windows either between 9 or 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., where Palestinians are able to move freely and securely from the north to the south in order to be out of harm's way and allow us greater freedom of action to operate against the enemy, which is Hamas, and not the Palestinian civilians.
Okay, I'm just interested about this announcement out of the White House. Were you at all influenced, the IDF influenced by the White House? Has there been any change in that practice? Is this going to be an ongoing practice? Or is it still a day-to-day proposition?
Well, of course, I mean, we are coordinating with our American allies. We listen and understand the concerns. And I think it is a wise practice that we have started and are now continuing to do. It serves all the interests, and it's a good thing to do to get civilians out of the battlefield. And, you know, in all honesty, we've been trying to do that for the better part of 2.5 weeks. Now it's simply ongoing. While there is fighting, we pause the fighting, allow civilians to move, and then we continue fighting. So it's a special additional effort.
An acceptance that there is a humanitarian crisis in Gaza as well?
I wouldn't use those terms. I would say that we understand that there are difficulties, clearly, and that we are operating together with the international community, led by the US, but facilitated by Egypt, in order to get food, water, and medicine into Gaza. We have opened 2 Israeli pipelines into Gaza with water, providing around 1 million cubic meters of water per day, and more trucks are coming in. Granted, I understand the situation isn't great in the south either, but it is much better than it is in the north, and the basic needs are taken care of. Hopefully this can end sooner rather than later. Until it does, we'll have to continue with the situation of providing humanitarian aid.
Okay, so if people are moving south to the corridor, is that then a commitment that you're not targeting missiles or doing missile strikes in the south? And why are you concentrating so much in the north? Is that where the Hamas tunnels are? Is that where you think most of the Hamas militants still are?
Yeah, the center of gravity of Hamas is in Gaza City, in and around Gaza City, the various neighborhoods around it. That is where Hamas has most of its combatants, most of its hardware, most of its rockets and combat capabilities towards Israel. So therefore, that is where we are focusing our strike. We have been very consistent with the message regarding targeting practices in other parts of Gaza, and we have said, if there are very important military targets in the south, for instance, a Hamas commander who appears and avails us the opportunity to strike, then we will strike in the south as well, taking extra precautions not to affect civilians. But if there are important targets, we are still at war, even if it is a safer area. But yes, we do take special precautions in the south, and you can see from each and every source that has been measuring our use of force north versus south, overwhelming majority of our strikes have been in the north. That is where we're focusing, and we are really trying to distinguish between combatant and non-combatant. Okay,
Israeli aircraft, it's been reported, have dropped leaflets over the Jenin camp homes. The leaflets read, and let me paraphrase this: residents of the camp, the reasons for the IDF activities inside the camp is that the terrorist attacks that you support, the IDF will stay here and return again and again until terrorism is definitively eliminated. Stay away from terrorism and you will live in peace. We warned you. That seems like, Jonathan, and correct me if I'm wrong, there is quite a conflation between Hamas combatants and the civilians living around them.
So we have to, I think the viewers need to know that that leaflet is Jenin, and that is what most people call the West Bank, what we call Judea and Samaria. That is a different area, and that is not Gaza. Those are different terrorists, all crazy jihadists, but in a different area, and we have been operating against them. And what we're trying to impress upon the civilians, again, seeing the practices of Hamas, that they are using civilians, mosques, schools, hospitals, and civilian dwellings in order to conduct activity against us. So we're trying to warn the civilians, this is not a practice that you should be tolerating, because they, Hamas, are endangering you and your families. But again, that is Judea and Samaria, the West Bank. We're focusing on Gaza, and what we're trying to do is to communicate to Palestinians.
Sorry, I should have clarified that that wasn't a completely separate area, the West Bank. But Jonathan, does that indicate that things are getting worse in the West Bank, and you're more concerned about activities there? Because there has been a reported IDF targeting of people there, but also Jewish settlers targeting other Palestinians.
Yes, you're right. There is an uptick in terrorist activity and violence in Judea and Samaria, and we conduct daily, or rather nightly, raids in order to arrest, apprehend, and preempt terror attacks orchestrated by Hamas, the Islamic Jihad, or other organizations. And we are vigilant and communicating and enforcing law and order with the Jewish population, the Israeli population in Judea and Samaria. We are aware of the fact that there is definitely a magnifier over everything happening in Judea and Samaria, and that many people around the world will try to blow things out of proportion and out of context, use undue behavior or unlawful behavior by Israelis. We are definitely we have no tolerance for that, and we are communicating with those citizens and making sure to enforce that there is no unlawful behavior. We definitely don't want focus to be sidetracked from what's going on in Gaza to other areas, which we understand that Hamas and others want to be achieved.
Okay, we'll speak soon. Lieutenant Colonel Jonathan Conricus, thanks for your time as always.
Thank you for having me.